Hello there, Parth Sharma this side bringing you the chess classics. In our last video, we saw game 9 between them, and in this one, guess what? We will watch game 27. That's right, no loss for Kasparov in last 17 games, so that's a fantastic achievement on his behalf. After being down 4 games, this seemed to be crushing, but he still holds on and we join the game number 27, and the last 17 draws were quite short draws, like 20 move draws, 30 move draws, except for one or two which went for one went for 93 moves and the another went for 51 moves, but they were quite relatively short, so nothing significant happening in those games. Nevertheless, we come to game 27. Anatoly Karpov is with white pieces and has 4 wins under his belt, so he needs only 2 wins to retain his championship, whereas Garry Kasparov needs some consolation win or probably a morale boosting win to try to at least stake a claim in the championship, and it doesn't look like a one-sided runaway. So we join the game number 27, and Karpov is with white pieces against Garry Kasparov with black. Plays one knight f3, the ready opening d5, d4, knight f6, c4, e6. So it looks like we might see g3 and Tarash, but no. We see knight c3, the queen's gambit declined opening, and anti-Nimzo Indian by playing bishop e7, no Ragozin variation of the Nimzo Indian by playing bishop e4. So bishop g5, h6, multi-purpose move attacking the bishop and also making room for the king after castles, if it castles that side. So bishop takes, e3, castles, queen c2, c5, dc5, dc4, bishop c4, and here there was an inaccuracy, an opening inaccuracy by Kasparov. He played queen a5 in this position. Well, he should have played knight d7 in this position, and after castles, knight takes c5, he recovers that pawn, and the only thing that would bother him is the development of this bishop, which could easily be done by playing b6 and then bishop b7, and the position would be better for black in that case. But after bishop c4, he plays queen a5, which was like seeking this pawn way too soon, but this pawn ain't going anywhere, and pawn is somewhat pretty secure in this position, or I should say pretty much under the control of black in this position. So Karpov continues his development and mass exchanges. Bishop takes, queen takes. Now if he goes for queen takes c5 in this position, then rook a c1, and black's development won't be easy with the bad bishop on c8. Black is somewhat behind in rearranging the pieces in this position, as we see, and it would be very good position for white to play. So understandably, in practical situations, in pragmatic situations, this move won't serve a good purpose. So understandably, Kasparov captures the queen and b takes, but this pawn, again, as I said, ain't going anywhere. It cannot be defended by any of the pieces. So knight d7, Kasparov attacks, and taking the advantage of this, that this, as we so called, doomed pawn, taking advantage of this pawn, Karpov uses this pawn brilliantly to hamper the pawn structure of black on the queen side. And this was the theme that we saw in the game between Yu Yang Yi and Wesley So from the final of FIDEchess.com Online Nations Cup, where Yu Yang Yi plays c6, and which hampered Wesley So's developments. And what does this do? It creates two weaknesses, this a pawn and this b pawn, which will become the c pawn, and this will hinder the development of these pieces, and these pieces will have pretty limited moves in the position. So good move to give back the pawn this way rather than allowing this knight to have a good position on c5. This was taken understandably, and here Karpov played rook a b1. Well, let's have a look at the moves like rook f d1. This is another alternative in the position. Rook a b1 isn't bad either, but just for the moment, just promoting some variations in this position, like how can the position be played. Then comes knight b6, attacking the bishop, bishop e2, knight a4, rook a c1, defending this pawn which was attacked by the knight, and rook b8. The position is still playable. Yes, there will be difficulties developing this bishop. This knight looks at the moment standing right at the edge of the board, but this rook can come to this b2 square, attacking this bishop and creating good counterplay. I think this position is playable for both colors, with white having some part of compensation with this underdevelopment of this bishop and some weaknesses here on a pawn and the c6 pawn. But nevertheless, rook a b1, not a bad move either, still a good move. Knight b6 attacking the bishop as we saw, so bishop tucks back to e2 and now c5. So what he's trying to do is to basically play this bishop on b7 and opening this diagonal for this bishop so that this bishop doesn't get blocked on c6. It's already a poor bishop, it cannot come here at the moment. And also a6 is covered by this bishop, so the bishop needs to find a good square. So b7 is pretty appropriate in that case. Rook f7 we played, and now there are two possibilities in this position, whether to play bishop d7 or to b7. Well, Kasparov played bishop b7, so let's have a look at the moves like bishop d7 in this position. But then comes knight e5, bishop a4, bishop e5, offering the trade of bishops. Bishops are exchanged, rook a c8 defends the pawn, rook a5 attacks the a7 pawn, but rook c7 is very good defensive move, defending the a7 pawn, defending the c5 pawn, and the rook stands better in this position. Still playable for both colors and good enough to draw the game. So after rook f7 by Karpov, bishop b7 we played. So taking advantage of this, since there are no queens on the board, Karpov decides to improve his king's position, which is a very good move indeed, just to bring the king closer to the center of the board and activating his king very quickly as of till move 18. So that's a very good move. Now in this position, Kasparov plays bishop d5, which is somewhat a positional inaccuracy on his part. Possibly he was trying to attack this pawn and try to create some play out of it, but this was a positional inaccuracy. The more apt move in this position would have been rook a c8. Now there are two possible ways to play this position, is to play rook b5 or pawn to a4. Well, let's have a look at the moves like rook b5 in this position. But then rook f d8 consolidates into the center, and now rook a5 attacking this pawn, and the only way to defend this pawn, I mean sensibly, well, you can play rook a8, but that's not sensible defense to this pawn, and neither is a6 because then the knight on b6 stands loose. So the only sensible way is to give this bishop for the knight, bishop takes, and then rook c7 again. As we saw earlier, position is still equal. Rook is holding very good to these two pawns, and there isn't a good way by which white would be able to attack these two pawns and create some chances out of it. After rook a c8, another possible way is to play a4 in this position. Let's look at a4, basically threatening this, and then if knight moves, then rook picks up the bishop. So again, bishop takes f3 is somewhat forced. Bishop takes, rook c7, again solidifying these two pawns, defending these two pawns very well, and also preparing rook f to c8, which is also a pretty good choice in this position. But then a5 comes, knight c4 attacks the pawn, rook b5 defends the pawn, and knight d6 attacks the rook. Rook goes to b2, and the position repeats here. And again seeing rook b5 and then knight d6. Position will be repeated and the game would end in a draw. The players will shake hands and pack their bags and go home. But instead of playing rook a c8 in this position, which would have been better move, he plays bishop d5. Still not a threatening move, but it is somewhat a positional mistake, because what this does is it reduces black's opportunities to improve its position, and he would have very limited moves to make to improve his position or to be able to defend this position, which is not the seat that Kasparov would want to sit. But certainly by this move, he's actually sitting in that seat to be making the only moves. You don't want to be, when you're trailing four wins and you haven't won a single game since 26 games, then this is the seat that you don't want to sit. But that's the case, that's the situation that Kasparov has pushed himself in, or to say put himself in. Very difficult situation indeed. So rook b5. Now what he is basically trying to do is to play rook takes c5, attacking this pawn. And again in this position he can play rook a c8. The only moves, that's what I said, bishop d5, this move was a positional inaccuracy, because this forces black to play the only moves. And when you are forced to play only moves, then you've put yourself in a very difficult situation, a situation that you don't want to be in. But then comes rook a5, and again rook c7 is a very strong defensive move. Again, what a job this rook is performing. But then comes c4, bishop takes, bishop takes. This transposes to the previous variation that we saw, and again this is a drawing move. So after rook b5, Kasparov decides to defend this pawn by playing knight d7. And again what this does is putting this knight, tying up in the defense of this pawn, this rook tying up defense of this pawn. And this is very difficult situation. And obviously if he had played bishop takes, then rook comes and puts a huge amount of pressure on this pawn. Or if you say, if you take this, then rook takes also creates a lot of activity with rook jumping here on the c7 square. That won't have been pleasant situation for black in that case, but nevertheless he didn't take it. He instead decides to defend this pawn, which was the sensible move. But defending this pawn was a sensible move, not with the knight, but instead rook a8 would have been a better move. Nevertheless, move ahead. Rook a5, and again if he wants to, he can play rook fc8. But again this rook fc8, c4, bishop c6, knight d2, rook c7, and still would have diluted into the drawn variation as shown before. But after rook a5 he plays rook fb8. Now this is a very clear understanding. What he's trying to do is to want to activate this rook towards the second file and try to attack these two weaknesses of white. Although bishop is not a weakness at the moment, the king defends the bishop, but this a2 pawn is a little bit backward here. But white can easily play c4 and close this line, but still it would be very difficult, and which is what white does. He plays c4, fixing the c5 pawn, and it comes with a tempo of attacking this bishop. So what this does, it forces this bishop to move to either c6 or b7, and it gives one more move for white to push for this pawn and to attack it. So what happens after bishop b7? Then comes rook d1, rook d8 defends the knight, knight d2, rook dc8, knight e4, rook c7. Still position looks equal, but it's again black's passive queen side will always offer white some serious attacking chances if this position is not played carefully by black. And if this position, if black makes any inaccurate move, then black's ship will sink very quickly. So very difficult. So understandably after c4 he plays bishop c6, Good move. And now Karpov is really pushing for that c5 pawn by playing knight d3. But it doesn't come too easily. Here Kasparov plays rook b4, which I think was a mistake. Instead, he could have played bishop e4 in the position. But let's have a look at the moves like bishop e4. The proper move, the appropriate move that should have been played. And there are two ways to play this position, either to play knight d3 or to play f3. We will look at both. So we look at the moves like knight d3 here. Then comes rook c8, defends the pawn. Rook b1 takes the claim of b file. Bishop takes, rook c7, and again this rook. Look at this move, and in so many variations we are watching this rook defending this a7 and c7 pawn, c5 pawn. This is again, the pawn is under control. It can't be attacked very easily, and the position would have diluted to a draw once again. Coming back to bishop e4, considering the moves like f3, then comes bishop h7, e4, rook b7, knight d3, rook c8, rook c3, g5, rook b3, and after rook takes b3, a takes b3, rook c7, again defending the a7 pawn and c5 pawn. This pawn on c5, this one is under control, and there would be no way that white would be able to attack this pawn since it has a light square bishop, not a dark square bishop. So this position still stands a draw. But here after knight e1, Kasparov plays rook b4, and now bishop d1. That's a very good move, and it is again the brilliancy of Karpov, that how beautifully he understands the positions and little tiny bit of things that that can influence your position, and he understands every little bit. He was in the positional play. One of the best experts in the positional play was Anatoly Karpov, and I consider him the greatest positional player ever. Probably Petrosian and Kramnik would challenge him, but they are way too far. So what does this do? Bishop d1, a backwards bishop move, placing it on d1. Well, the first thing it stops is to play rook a4, exchanging this good active rook, putting pressure here, and bishop is controlling this square. It prevents rook a4 being played, and now in this position knight d3 is a genuine threat, and it looks like it can't be stopped. So rook goes back to b7. Knight was coming with a fork, so rook jumps back. f3, excellent move, stopping bishop e4, as we saw in one variation where he would have played bishop e4 instead of rook b4. Then comes rook d8. So he also have realized that he cannot defend the c5 pawn, and it's also not easy to defend the c5 pawn. This move cannot happen because this is threatened, because the pawn controls these two squares, and it's not easy to defend this pawn. And with the c4 pawn being fixed, this bishop cannot attack this a2 pawn as well. So very limited chances for black in this position. And now comes knight d3. So he's looking to bounce on the c5 pawn, and his idea is to play knight takes c5. And now Kasparov plays g5, and it can look tempting to play knight takes c5 immediately, but this would be a mistake, because after knight takes c5, rook takes c5, rook b2 activates the rook, and you cannot play rook c2 because of rook takes d1. With check will pick this rook, and if rook takes bishop, then rook d2 is a simple draw. There's no way that you would be able to stop these perpetual checks. Black will pick up and gobble up these pawns, and the position would end in a draw. So in this position, knight takes c5 immediately would be a terrible mistake. So what does Karpov do? He plays an incredible move here. Now, what was bothering knight takes c5? Rook b2 was bothering us. So how can you stop rook b2? Bishop b3, double exclaim, brilliant move indeed. Stops this rook b2 idea, and now there's no way that black can stop this knight takes c5. And after king f8, knight takes c5 happens, and Karpov is a pawn up in this position. By having pawn up, it is a material advantage, or I say a positional advantage, not a winning advantage. So the game still continues, and can Karpov be able to exploit this? Let's have a look. Knight takes, rook d6, king e2, so he's little by little is improving his position. King e7, rook d1, offering the trade of rooks, which was gleefully accepted. King takes d1, king d6, attacking the rook. So rook comes to a5, and now there are two possible ways to play this position. Let's have a look at the move f6 in this position. Then comes king d2, rook c7, king c3, king e7, bishop a4, threatening to exchange bishops, and if bishops come off, then c pawn will really charge through. There would be no opponent to that, and there would be no blockade. The a pawn is a little bit loose, and this extra pawn will win the game. But what happens if bishop d5, threatening rook takes? The pawn cannot take because of the pin. But then comes bishop b5, and this is a winning move. This puts black into a zugzwang kind of position, and white would simply try to play rook here, and then try to push this pawn, and possibly try to lock the king side and create a winning advantage. So after rook a5 in this position, Kasparov plays f5, but then king e2, h5, so he's pushing his king side pawns. That's a good idea. e4, and e4 is played so that this rook can swipe off all these pawns on the 5th rank. F takes, bishop takes, and now rook takes g5, also defending this pawn. Bishop f5, don't be in a hurry. If takes, then bishop g4 check, and you don't want to play rook down in this position, do you? So king e3, and he could have played h4 in this position. What that would have done is to fix this h pawn here, and giving the pawn a two-step head start in the endgame. So in the case if these bishops or these rooks come off in any situation, then this two-stepped pawn can prove very decisive. Although this pawn is tied up defending this bishop on b3, if this pawn is on a6 locked by this pawn, then in some cases if you are able to eliminate this pawn, then this a pawn sitting here on a6 can turn deadly indeed. So h4 would have been an option instead of king e3, but Kasparov himself plays h4, and there are few possible alternatives in this position. One is the move which was played in the game, and the another is to consider this move g4 here. This is very interesting. If this is taken en passant, h takes, king e5, g4, king f6, rook g8, king f7, rook h8. This is not possible because of rook h7 would pick the rook. King g7, rook h2, bishop is attacked, so it comes to here, and king f4, and this position would have been winning by the virtue of this loose e pawn and a powerful passed pawn c pawn. this would have been enough for white to win. But after h4, Karpov plays king d4. So it looked as if he didn't want to change the pawn structure before the adjournment of the game. Otherwise, as we said, g4 would have been a great move. Then comes e5, check, king comes to c3, bishop comes to b1, and here there are few ways that white can play in this position. The two best ways to play this position was to play either c5 check or a4. Well, oh sorry, not there, a4. Yes. So let's have a look at the move c5 check. King takes c5, rook takes e5 check, king d6, rook e6 check, king c5, rook e1, and the only square where bishop can go is to h7, rook e5 check, king b6, bishop d5, and this position white stands very much better in the case, and in a meantime or in a perfect world would try to play here or try to play here. Just try to pick this pawn. That's it. Another way to play after bishop b1 is to play a4 here. Then comes rook e7, rook g4, rook h7, rook g5, king e6, a5, bishop e4, rook g4 attacks the bishop, bishop f5, and rook g8. The position still would have been pretty much better for white to play, with in this position holding to this c5 pawn, and chances are with this rook placed pretty much here, rook c8 might come and would try to shepherd this pawn down the board. But after bishop b1, this was the move 39th, which was made by Garry Kasparov. So Anatoly Karpov had to make this one move before the time control is reached, and he plays a3, an inaccuracy on his part. As we saw, either a4 or c5 would have been better, but a3 was somewhat casual because after rook e7 the game was adjourned and Karpov had to seal the move 41, and he had to play that. So what's the sealed move that was played by Karpov? He played rook g4 in this position, and the move was sealed, and it was pretty much understood by Kasparov that he would play rook g4. So in their home analysis they analyzed this move, rook h7. This wasn't played in the game, by the way. Then comes h3, king c5, activating the king and also try to create an opposition. Bishop d1, rook d7, cutting the king and also attacking the bishop. Bishop e2, rook d4, rook g5, rook exchange won't have done a good because this comes with check, and after this things would have turned deadly. So rook e4, king d2, rook d4 check, king c1, bishop d3, bishop takes, rook takes e5 check, king takes c4, rook e4 check, king d5, rook takes h4, rook takes a3, and rook g4 check. From the first glance it looks like these two passed pawns would win the game, but this is a highly unclear ending because the white's pawns aren't too far advanced, and this rook and this pawn can easily run down the board, creating their own counterplay. With the meantime, this white king is so far away from these two pawns, and this king is in a perfect position to come back, try to defend, and it is still unclear whether white's winning or not, but still it isn't white losing, that's for sure. So after rook g4, Kasparov plays h3. Now another possible variation here is to play g takes h3, a paradoxical move which actually somehow wins. Bishop f5, rook h4, e4, bishop d1, king e5, and after rook h8, this is a perfectly winning position for white. Two extra pawns, although these two pawns, one behind another, looks like there are basically three pawns rather than four, but two pawns are two pawns, whether one behind another or two behind another, still be winning, because there is no black pawn on the h file. That's why. However, after the move h3 by Kasparov, Karpov plays the move g3 here, which was somewhat giving him away. Rook e8, and now a simple winning move would have been to play rook h4 here. And after rook f8, rook takes. There was absolutely nothing that would have been done. Bishop f5 shouldn't be played because of this, or yeah, this. Then rook f3 check, king b2, king c5, rook h8. White is better, and with these two connected pass pawns, and since no dilution, bishops are here, rooks are here, white is completely winning in this position. After rook e8, rook g7 isn't too bad, but still it gives black some chances to pounce on. Rook f8, so rook takes a7, he gives up the pawns, so Karpov is two pawns up in this position, already in the driver's seat, but still position is highly unclear with this far advanced h pawn, creating good counterplay for black. Rook f2 activating the rook, king b4, and here Kasparov blunders. He plays rook takes h2. The simple move would have been to play rook b2. Let's have a look at the move like rook b2. Then comes c5 check, king c6, and there are two possible ways to play this position. And if you play rook a6 check, well, this would be a mistake, because after king c7, king c4, rook takes h2, king d5, rook g2, giving way for this pass pawn, king takes e, h2, threatening queen on the next turn. So rook c6 check, king c6, bishop d5 check, forking, king takes e5, and bishop takes g2 is a dead draw. Why? Because this king will hunt down this pawn, and this bishop would sacrifice itself for this pawn. This is a clear draw. And another thing that might happen is to play bishop here, here, and then here to get rid of this bishop and successfully promote it to queen. So that can also be threatening. Another possible way after king c6 is to play king c4, threatening mate in 1. Then comes bishop c2, defending the mate like X-ray defense. Rook a6 check, king c7, bishop takes, rook takes, king d5, rook takes h2. Again, same variation but without the bishops, and this time with rooks. Rook a7 check, king b8, rook h7, rook h1, king e4. If king takes, then rook check will h2, and there would be no way that this king can be covered by the pawn. So king e4, h2, king f3, king c8. Still unclear, but a better position for white. Difficult to convert but playable, because this king is in front of these two pawns, controlling very well, and there is already a threat to play rook away and make it a queen. Probably this rook can come behind and take this pawn and try to create a filet-dose position where the opponent king is front of your passed pawn. Still, drawish kind, but could have been possible if he had played rook b2. But here rook takes h2, and this was a blunder, a decisive mistake indeed. Because after c5 check, king c6, bishop a4 check, there is absolutely no stopping this pawn at all. And what does this do? It drives this king away from the c pawn, and this clears the path, and there's c6, c7, very much coming indeed. King d5, rook d7 check, king e4, and Karpov pushes with c6. So this pawn is 2 squares away from becoming a queen. Still not easy. How can white be able to do this? Rook b2 check, king a5, rook b8, and this was a mistake. If he had played, let's say, if he had played bishop c2 here, then comes c7, bishop takes a4, queen, bishop takes d7, queen takes d7, h2, queen c6 check, king d4, queen c1, rook f2, a4, e4, and after king b4, there is already a pressure to play queen d1 check, king coming here, and then this check, and then putting your queen on this promoting square. And not to forget this passed a pawn. This is a completely winning position already, but after king a5, rook b8 was played, and this quickens the victory, because after c7 it is very difficult. How will you be able to stop this pawn? Rook c8, and here he could have simply played bishop c6 check, but king b6 isn't losing, it's just a little slow, and king f3 would have been a better move. Just try to take this pawn, but he plays king e3, and this allows this bishop c6 controlling this square h1, h2, and this gives the move g4. Now what happens instead of g4 if rook d8 is played? That would have been pretty much comprehensive, because after bishop f5, bishop b7, e4, so what does this do? It stops this diagonal, but there's absolutely no stopping, because after bishop takes c8, h1 queen, so black has a queen now on h1. It would look like rook against a queen. Black wins. No. Bishop takes f5, queen b1 check, king a5, queen e1 check, king a4, and black has run out of checks. There's no way this queen can check. There's no queen d1, the rook controls. If queen c1, this becomes queen, and you give up your queen. Rook and bishop will simply win the game. This would have been even more quicker. But nevertheless, g4 was played. Karpov thinking very practically, and he's making sure that he doesn't get into this rook d8 stuff, because it would have been very difficult to calculate this king a4 move, so that this queen runs out of check. So he plays very safe. He doesn't want to blow this up. Rook h8. So if this happens, bishop takes, then rook is in a good position to recapture, but rook d1 attacks the bishop and also defends the promotion. Bishop comes to a2, rook e1 check, king f4, rook e4 check, king g3, rook takes e5, and if you promote, then bishop takes. No time to take, because it has to look itself for the queen. King takes g4, and after rook e2, Kasparov resigns the game. 5-0 after game 27. Anatoly Karpov is really sweeping him apart. So it's 5-0 after game 27. Oh my good lord. Clear thing, you cannot play this because of bishop takes. That's the only hope, and if you try to recapture, But then there would be absolutely no stopping of the c8 queen. And in the meantime, rook is also attacking the bishop. It's very good that this game was played, and Karpov showing again his endgame prowess and his positional technique, understanding little things. But 5-0, and Kasparov has to really. It looks like one more win, and it would have been a humiliating exit. So, after 27 games, it's 5-0, and Kasparov is hasn't had any win, any chance of a victory. Probably he had that in game 6 where he missed queen h5, but this is looking very ugly for this 21-year-old champ. I would say champ this time, but still the tournament goes on as long as Karpov secures his 6th win. So will Kasparov be able to bounce back? We will come to game 32 where it all happens. I hope you liked my analysis, this long video, including every little bit of analysis that I could do with the help of several books, engines, and my own analysis. If you like my work, then do take time to support me on Patreon and PayPal, because your support is my motivation which keeps me going for the past 41 minutes. Thanks for watching. Cheers. Bye.